risk, supporting technology and operations. With me today, I have got the team from WSIS Uganda affiliate, and we welcome all of you onto this webinar. First, some housekeeping rules. We encourage that people use the chat for any questions that they may have that will be gone through at the end of the presentations. We also request that all mics remain muted, except when called upon to speak. Next up, we'll have a few remarks from a member from WSIS before we dive into introducing our speaker today. Agnes, will you share with us about WSIS Uganda, please, or Elizabeth?
Thanks, Patricia. I think we can give people maybe 2 more minutes, and we start at exactly 5. I see many people are still joining, and I think Elizabeth is in the waiting room adding members.
Great, thanks, Diana.
But right. All of you, most welcome. You feel at WSIS Uganda. Team, you're most welcome. We're just giving everyone just a minute to join. We'll start at exactly 7:05. Thanks for keeping time. And as you join, feel free to put in the chat where you're joining from. I see we have, global colleagues joining us. You're most welcome to WSIS Uganda. Stella, no pressure. The topic was really, the was warmly welcomed. It seems it is, something that that people are really interested in understanding. Great. Over to you, Patricia.
All right. Good evening once again, everyone. Welcome to our WSIS webinar. This is WSIS Uganda, and from all the members of the Ugandan affiliate, we'd like to thank you for joining, first of all, and we hope you enjoy the webinar. Before we go into the webinar, we have a few housekeeping rules that I'd like to share. Firstly, we encourage that all the people in the webinar use the chat section for questions that we'll go through at the end of the presentation. We also request that the microphones remain muted, except when called upon to speak. If you have any other questions, please put them in the chat or comments. And next, we'll have a member of WSIS share with us about what the WSIS Uganda affiliate is about. Either Elizabeth, Diana, or Pauline.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. WSIS Uganda is Women in Cybersecurity, is a Uganda affiliate of the global WSIS network focused on increasing the participation, retention, and leadership of women and men in cybersecurity within Uganda. We do call the men allies. It supports students, early career professionals, and experienced practitioners through mentorship, technical training, networking, and advocacy. The affiliate is currently based in Kampala and was established in 2025 as part of the worldwide WSIS affiliate network. Currently, if you go to the official website of WSIS, you will see that our president is Diana Gaba Tukundane. Our vice president is Pauline Kire. Myself, Elizabeth Usinje, I'm the WSIS secretary. And we have other board members within the WSIS fraternity. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Over to you, Patricia.
Thank you. In the spirit of introductions, my name is Patricia Ivanis Kaijuka. I serve at Stanbic Bank as the non-financial risk manager, supporting technology and operations. Today we have with us Stella Simiyu. Stella Simiyu is the managing director of Sentinel Africa Uganda and a seasoned governance, risk, and compliance professional with over 20 years of experience helping organizations strengthen resilience, governance, and regulatory compliance. Her passion is to build more resilient organizations by benchmarking their operations against internationally recognized ISO standards and global best practices. Throughout her career, Stella has guided public and private sector organizations in implementing enterprise risk management, business continuity management, information security management, data protection, and internal audit frameworks. Through clients aligned with such ISO 20000, 27001, and ISO 31000. Driven by the belief that resilient organizations are better positioned to grow, innovate, and disruption, leadership, sustainable governance, risk management that create low costs. That said, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Patricia, and thank you for that introduction. Thank you to the WSIS team for having me here. I'm looking forward towards the presentation that I will be doing for you today. I will be sharing a few, definitions of what governance, risk, and compliance is, and a pathway to it. I will also share a bit about my own story and be able to take some of your questions after that. Before I start off my presentation, I would just like to know from the people who've joined, what are your backgrounds? Just type it in the chat. Are you in information security? Are you in finance? Are you in procurement? I would just want to know who are the people I'm talking to today, so that I can be able to know, how to structure my conversation. So I'm just going to allow you 1 minute to type in, for me, your current designation. Are you currently a housewife, which is perfectly fine? Yeah, just type in for me what's your current designation. Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. Okay. So we have quite a number of people in information security, some in risk. We have a fresh graduate. We have a SOC L1 analyst, I'm guessing, or basically someone working in computer science, cybersecurity. All right, so we have a very diverse group of people, cybersecurity enthusiasts. All right. So I'll be sharing my screen and then I will start off my conversation from there. And then after that, I'll be sharing a bit about my personal journey and the things I have learned throughout that journey. And for anyone who wants to switch careers or who wants to enhance their career, do more, how can they go ahead and do that? So I'll just share my screen and then we can take it from there. Okay, so I'm hoping you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. So I will start off with just looking at, we are talking about the aspect of governance and GRC, but there might not be an understanding from everybody of exactly what does GRC entail. So I'll start off with something called the 3 lines of defense. And when you come and you're analyzing how an organization manages risk, you will look at an organization and say, an organization would probably have the first line of defense. And the first line of defense is usually, the business units, the IT teams, the system owners. They implement the processes. And if, for example, I am in IT, I am doing things like access management, or I am doing things like IT support. I am basically keeping the lights on. Then we come to the second line of defense, and that is where GRC falls, where you will find people typically are in the space of risk management, information security, quality, legal, and compliance. And then we go into the third line of defense, where you're looking at audit, and these people provide assurance. So if you're looking at understanding how a business operates, the first line basically, from an IT perspective, that is, they operate IT. They keep the lights on. From the second line of defense, what they do is they help the organization understand their risks. And then the third line of defense basically provides assurance. So from the conversation that I have just started, I can see a lot of you guys already fall in the second line of defense. A few are in the first line of defense. So you might be thinking, how can I move through all these lines? How do they interact? And what can I do about that? So apart from the first, second line, and third line of defense, then you find that there are other arms of assurance. So if, for example, you're working in an institution, you might be subject to audits by Bank of Uganda, by Uganda Revenue Authority, and all these external regulators. So when you're looking at breaking down, what does risk management actually involve? When you look at GRC, GRC will be about creating of policies, creating of governance, understanding how risk is being managed in the environment, understanding measurement, understanding how to monitor the risk exposure. And they work together with the business units. So the business units will follow the security policies. If we have, for example, an access management policy, or they'll have a password management policy, they will be making sure that those are implemented. They will be about protecting the data. So risk management basically helps the organization understand how is it that we are protecting our data. They'll perform the backups, they'll perform patching, and what risk management will do is validate that that is actually happening. And then they will also identify and report incidents. Then when we go to internal audit, what they will do is, in terms of validation of controls, they will have an objective review to risk. They will give assurance to senior executives and the board on assertions of risk exposure. So in terms of internal audit, they provide what you call independent assurance. Now, looking at governance, risk, and compliance, if we break it down into its components, and what exactly is it? Governance is about creation of policies. It's about having the right leadership structures at the right levels, understanding who is accountable for certain actions, and creating strategies. And that's why when you talk about governance, you will have things like you're developing frameworks. So you're developing, say, for example, an information security framework, a data protection framework. So you're creating the policies, the structures, the accountabilities to be able to manage the risk. Yeah. So the key question that you ask in the governance layer is, how should we manage security and risk to support the business? Yeah. Then we go into risk management. Now, risk management involves identifying risk, assessing it, mitigating risk. So the key question we ask ourselves there is, what could go wrong and how do we manage it? Now, when I asked, the people who've joined to just basically tell me in the chat where they are from, there are some people who said, I am from cyber. There are some people who said, I am from risk. I was hoping that a few people would say, maybe I am from fraud, maybe I am from data protection, because when you look at the aspect of risk management, the types of risk that an organization faces are quite wide. So when it comes to the arm of risk management, then you find there is compliance risk, there's information security risk, there's business continuity risk, there's health and safety risk, there's enterprise risk. So the types of risks that an organization tends to manage is a wide range of risk, including cyber risk. Yeah. And then compliance. So compliance is about your laws, your regulations. Now, when it comes to the aspect of compliance, especially from a cybersecurity perspective, there will be specific laws that have been implemented by the land. Those could include laws about computer misuse. They could include laws about data protection. They could include laws about consumer protection, how we basically manage our data, and all these other laws and regulations. So compliance is about understanding the laws and regulations which we have in the land and how we then comply to it. So if we have a law that, for example, requires us to, whenever we are transferring data from a certain jurisdiction to another jurisdiction, it requires us to get special, let's say, approvals, then your compliance function is about making sure that first, we understand that law. Then second, we have, goes back to the governance layer. We have somebody who is accountable and responsible to make sure that we are actually compliant with that law. Now, in addition to laws and regulations, they could be contractual obligations. So I could have signed a contract with MasterCard. I could have signed a contract with a SWIFT or any other institution. And in it, I have made some certain assertions. So I've made assertions about my incident management capabilities, my disaster recovery capabilities, my ability to report to you if I had an incident. And now those become requirements, which then again, we need to make sure that there's somebody responsible and somebody who is accountable for. So we need to understand our contractual obligations, which we have, and how we are going to meet those contractual obligations. And then we go into internal policies. So internal policies, Now, we could have specified certain things in our internal policies. For example, we could have specified that when a user comes in, they must be removed, or rather when a user leaves the organization, they must be removed immediately. So that becomes something which is in our policy. Again, we have to have set the accountability, the responsibility of who is doing that. So our compliance function is about looking at all our compliance requirements and making sure we are able to meet those required rules and those required obligations. So then the question becomes, if I am to start off a career in information security, what would that career look like? What are some of the things that I would be doing? There are a number of people who said, I am in information security. Actually, a few, not many. Most said you're in cybersecurity. But there are two roles: information security, cybersecurity. Anyway, so in information security, one of the things you could be doing is issues around creation of policy, creation of governance in terms of information security. You could also be creating, helping the organization understand their information security risk. You could also be helping the organization understand or create awareness on information security and deal with the issues to do with conduct of people. You could also be creating awareness or helping the organization manage issues of third party. Now, if I wanted to be in information security, what are some of the education requirements from at least a degree requirement that I would need? So I have seen people who have started off, as BSc computer science, etc., etc. There are engineers, mathematics, guys who have a background in mathematics. So what I have seen is that generally information security tends to lend itself towards people who are naturally analytic. They're good in analytics, yeah? So you will see that then people will augment that, their first degree, with some of these certifications. So things like CISA, things like CISM, things like CIRISC, and ISO 27. Now, from a competency perspective, so your soft skills perspective, what are some of the things that I've seen that are required when it comes to information security? So from a soft skills perspective, I've seen that you need to be very good at communicating. You also need to be very good at acting assertively. What you will notice about most of these roles is that you will be working almost like a consultant to the business. Now, what that means is you have to be almost a busybody. So understand what is the business doing, what is the business strategy, what is the new product which is being done, what are the new risks, etc., etc. You also have to be very good at influencing, again, because you will be acting as a consultant to the business. And because of that, you will be asking people to change. You'll be asking them, they need to comply with this, but it will be almost like you're convincing. You also have to be good at managing self. Unlike other careers where you will find from day to day, you have an almost predictable in the morning I wake up, I know I am posting, if I am in finance, I know I'm coming and I'm posting certain general ledgers, I am doing the end of day accounts, etc., etc. The people who have a career in information security more or less find that every day, okay, not really every day, but what they are doing changes almost every quarter because the priorities of the business change and you have to change yourself to fit into the priorities. Again, something that is key is around managing yourself. So you find that once you understand, okay, this is what I need to do, you will be expected to do some project planning in terms of understanding if I am doing a third-party risk assessment, how many third parties, which ones am I going to complete in quarter one, which ones am I going to completing question 2. There's a board meeting on this date. What do I need to present to the board? So in terms of managing self, there's a lot of expectation that you're able to manage yourself. The other career that you see around governance, risk, and compliance is a career around business continuity. So from a 3 lines of defense perspective, you will find that IT will, will be in charge of disaster recovery planning. The business units will be in charge of, operating. If I am in finance, I'm in charge of the financials. If I'm in HR, etc., etc. However, as a business continuity professional, what you come to do is to help the business to understand in a crisis what is priority for the business. Now, when it comes to you saying in a crisis, what is priority for the business, most people here, you are saying that my job is not important. So again, communication becomes one of the biggest things that you have to develop. How to be able to make people understand that, no, I am not saying that your job is not important, but I am just saying that in a crisis, it might be more important for us to do 1 rather than 2. So a business continuity professional helps the business do things like business impact assessments. It then helps from those business impact assessments be able to come up with actual plans to support the business during crisis, including disaster recovery plans. It then helps the business also test those plans from time to time, and then also helping the management team understand how to carry out, or rather how to act in a crisis. So some of the roles that I've seen that do well in that include roles around Bachelor of Science, engineering, mathematics, BCom, and to augment that, you need relevant certifications. So you find that people who do well in this career have done ISO 22301, which is the business continuity management standard. They've also done certifications around disaster recovery, and they are good at communicating, again, influencing. They are good at tethering, tethering basically, because when you present certain plans, people will always be like, no, I don't think that is the way. I think this should be our priority. What is the probability of that happening? So in terms of communicating, convincing, influencing, those are some of the soft skills that are needed. From a compliance perspective, you find that you might have a role around data protection. So this includes being the DPO. So the DPO is a compliance role where you're looking at the law, the data protection law, and you're ensuring that your institution is compliant with the law. And the compliancy can come from, having the relevant policies, doing a data protection impact assessment when needed, when a certain criteria has been reached, creating awareness on data protection issues, covering things like data protection agreements, data protection by design, data protection by default. All those activities would be some of the things that a data protection officer or basically is carrying out. Now, some of the people who I have seen who do well in this are people with a background in law. I've also seen people with a background in science, Bachelor of Science, computer science, simply because there is when you come to privacy by design, privacy by default, then you will be interfacing a lot with the technical capability of the organization to actually secure personally identifiable information. So then in terms of an education requirement, some of the certifications which are needed here include ISO 27701, CDIPSI, which is the ISACA qualification, so that you can be able to understand the area around data protection. So some of the things that I've seen is that when it comes to GRC especially, that apart from technical skills, and if you notice from this breakdown, is that a wide range of people can be in GRC, from lawyers, engineers, people with a mathematics background. So it doesn't really require you, for example, to have done a degree in cyber to be able to be in GRC, because the requirements, while they are technical requirements, they are also requirements. If you notice that when it comes to GRC, it's more about understanding the strategy of the organization, and then from there being able to understand, for this strategy of the organization, what are the risks around it, and then to be able to control those risks. What policies, what responsibilities do I need, what procedures do I need, etc. So key skills needed to make it in GRC. You have your technical skills. So you need to be able to have the relevant, certifications that I've mentioned. You need a lot of the human skills. So somebody who is good in GRC basically likes to work with people. If you don't like to work with people, don't take a career in GRC. And then the conceptual skills, so ability to see the big picture. Because in GRC, what you will be asked is to be able to say, why is that important? And in the bigger scheme of things, if I look at the 100 things I need to worry about as, let's say, the CEO of a certain company, why should I worry about this thing you're telling me about? So you also have to be able to prioritize and tell your CEOs, this is what you need to worry about. This one, we can park it for now. This one, we have compensating controls. So being able to see the big picture. And then diagnostic skills, so ability to just look at and analyze the circumstance, and being able to look at the nature and the particularities of any condition. So if I was to say what is the day-to-day of some of these roles, and how can I build myself into some of these roles? So if I had the designation Information Security Manager, some of the things I would be doing from a people perspective, I would be dealing with, hiring, managing, maybe a few SOC analysts. And this again depends on, in some areas, information security and cyber security are put together. So if you look at information security, it's more in terms of policy, the risk management, etc. If you look at cyber security, we will look at being able to understand your cyber risk, being able to understand, if I have a SOC team, being able to understand, what are the areas around the vulnerabilities I'm facing, what are some of the mitigations I've put in place, etc., etc. So sometimes those are different teams, sometimes it is the same team. So these are some of the things that you would take into consideration. From a risk perspective, you would be developing risk registers, probably in charge of ISMS. If you have things like PCI DSS, they would also be under your purview. As I said, the SOC operations sometimes is under the Information Security Manager, depending on how big that operation is. Sometimes you find those are separate roles, sometimes it's the same, it is handled by the same person. So then you will find that this person will oversee your security operations, oversee how your SIM is logging and monitoring, being able to do alerting, incident management, vulnerability and assessment. They will handle a bit of compliance management, and they will be able to think about, from a budgeting perspective, what are some of the things that I need to put in place? What are some of the security tools that I need to bring on board to be able to better manage my risks? And then from a stakeholder reporting perspective, you'd expect this person to be able to talk to the board, to be able to come up with security metrics and dashboards, risk communication and awareness programs. From the perspective of like a business continuity manager, they would be looking at handling of your BIAs, your BCPs, your DRs, thinking about things like your recovery time objectives, critical function mappings, your crisis management, so your crisis response. They will help you a lot with your testing, and then vendor management, and then also your reporting to the board, and your awareness, both in terms of staff, departmental champions, and basically embedding business continuity in projects. And then from a data protection perspective, you would be looking at things like, looking at data governance, looking at your data inventories, your data classifications. They would look at overall compliance against the relevant law, privacy by design, just as I had mentioned, breach management, third-party management, including vendor due diligence, and then training and awareness. So now that we've understood, the different GRC conversations or careers that we have out there, how can we then say your GRC can be either your stepping stone to your next cyber career? So the first thing that you would have to do when you are looking at where are you right now, and then where do you want to be? So you would ask yourself a number of things. So the first thing you would ask yourself is, what are my key strengths? So I'll give you an example of myself, how I ended up in GRC. I actually used to be in customer service. And the reason why I was recruited into risk management was simply because the company I was working for at the time wanted somebody with a good understanding of the business. And when they looked around and said, for the various departments, which department has the best understanding of the business? It was customer service, because we have to understand all the products, understand the failure point of the products, be able to understand, okay, if when this product fails like this, escalates to this team, this is probably the problem, etc. Now, when I looked at my own character, some of the things that lended myself towards a career in GRC was the aspect of, I was a very good communicator. I naturally liked people. I liked the aspect of presenting in front of people, being able to organize people. And I was generally someone who you could say was very adventurous. So I didn't like a career that was boring. So I kind of found customer service to be a bit boring, because you were doing almost the same thing every day. What I've said about GRC is that because the regulator changes, the products change, everything, you find that every other time you might not be doing the same thing this quarter as you were next quarter. So if I did a self-assessment of myself at that time, I would be able to see that there was a closer alignment between my own character as a person and then what GRC presented. Then stage 2 is, now you've learned about yourself. You've said, okay, I'm this type of person. I like this, I like that, I like the other. Then you could then say, okay, based on what I like and where I am right now, these are my options. So a number of people on the chat have said they are in cyber. So do you feel totally fulfilled in what you're doing right now? Are there times when you say, I wish I could do more, or I feel like I'm not being utilized effectively? So based on that, then you would have to decide if then I need to do more, what is the more that I can do? What are some of the qualifications, or what are some of the careers out there that lend themselves towards building my career? So again, just looking back at my career, some of the things that I did intentionally is I entered risk management actually as the enterprise risk management analyst at the time. So I was in charge of doing risk assessments, but the organization was also growing and their risk profile was growing. So within 2 years of joining that team, one of the most critical risks which they were facing was business continuity risks. And they brought in someone to lead that function. And I, knowing or understanding what business continuity was, with the little information I had that time, I felt that I needed to be inside this. I needed to be part of this. So then what I did, I went to my manager and I told them, I want you to put me, I will do extra work for you. So I told her, change my title and have it as ERM and Business Continuity Officer. And let me work under this person who has come. I will do that. So her problem was, you're asking for more work. I told her, yes, I am asking for more work. And with this, then my work portfolio expanded. But with that, then I was able to build up, what I was doing, and it added to overall my career growth. Then, stage one is make your decisions, set your goals. So as I was continuing on in my career, then I could see in the organization I was at, there was a certain way that your career would build up. So the enterprise risk management function had over 70 people, it had fraud management, it had revenue assurance, it had compliance as a function, anti-money laundering. So when you look at GRC roles, they're quite wide depending on which risk area. It even had a cyber team, which would just do cyber. So then deciding, how do I want to grow? Do I want to grow within enterprise risk? Do I want to go into cyber? Do I want to go into fraud and fraud investigation? And there was that whole path. And I decided that for me, my path was to build and eventually be basically at that point it was the head of risk. So then I was building up my portfolio to be able to become that person. And what that involved is because in 2 years after doing business continuity, then in another 3 years, information security became key. And we started off a project to implement ISO 27001. So when they were implementing this, then I volunteered again. I said, you know what, I want to be part of this project. I was not the project manager, but I was the project manager's assistant. And through that, what happened is that, again, my scope grew. So understanding where you want to be, how you want to grow, and then putting yourself in situations, whether you have been put there by the organization or you place yourself there, is important in terms of your growth, because that's how you grow. So if you're able to chart your path and say, to become head of risk, this is what I need to understand, and then be able to make sure you are understanding that. Now, in addition, so I came in with a degree in Bachelor of Commerce. So the reason why I actually added this here, because business continuity was it has remained my key love. So my first degree was Bachelor of Commerce, but I have actually managed to, most of the certifications here, I have managed to attain. So again, it was about planning my education, being able to understand if I wanted to be at a certain level, what does that mean for me? It means that my degree is not enough, and I need to be able to take up all these certifications so that when I'm giving advice, then I am also giving advice from a point of knowledge, and I can be able to back up that advice. So, in closing, my key advice is, first of all, understand where you're starting from. So what skills do you already have? So where are you? Are you working in compliance? Are you working in audit? Are you working in IT support? What are the skills you have? And then where do you want to be? So you now start building your foundational knowledge in GRC and be able to implement, or rather, to familiarize yourself with certain frameworks so that you can be able actually to make a difference. Then gain practical experience. Again, don't wait for the time you're going to be put in that position, because it might not happen immediately, but participate as a champion, volunteer, make suggestions maybe to implement best practice frameworks in your organization, and then challenge yourself also on the soft skills perspective. So some of the things I've seen people doing that have worked, I know that not really Rotarians, but basically if you look at Rotary, if you look at Isaka, if you look at these other things that you participate in out of work, they will sometimes force you to do presentations, and it will be less from a point of judgment. If you come and you're doing a presentation at work, sometimes you feel a lot of judgment. Will I have said the right things, etc. But then when you practice it out of work, maybe join Rotary, join even your Sunday school and say, I'm going to talk in front of everybody on Sunday. It helps you really practice those skills of soft skills of communication. For critical thinking, think through your decisions. Don't be afraid to be challenged, because it's only through being challenged that you can actually get better. So just developing some of those soft skills is what sets you apart, because in risk management, in GRC, your soft skills, more than even your certification, is what will push you apart, because those skills really help you to work with people, which is what, when you look at GRC, you're looking at. So with that, I can see it's already 20 minutes to the end of this presentation, actually less than 20, I think 10. And I would like to hand it back to my team so that I can take a few questions.
Thank you very much, Stella, for the wisdom that you shared. For me, the key takeaway is to remain teachable and always raise your hand for opportunities. We see that there's also Thanksgiving in the chat. We have a question from Ismail. Which particular certification did you do? And some certifications ask for 5 years of experience, like CISP and CISM. Which other GRC certifications can one do as a beginner before they add CISP or CISM or ISO 27001?
Okay. When you look at building competence, and at Sentinel, I work a lot with consultants, so I have a lot of experience in terms of bringing someone straight from university and then training them and getting them to understand frameworks, and then now actually, they start to perform. So what I would say is that in terms of competence buildings, sometimes people rush and say, I need to be able to get certificate X. But the reason why these certificates will tell you you need 5 years experience is that what it's telling you is that competence is not just the certificate. Competence is a mix of you being able to do the job, you being able to understand the job, which will only come with you actually having done the job. So that's the reason why CISP, ISO 27, etc., they will tell you, I am going to assess you not only on you have done a certification, you have read and you have passed, but I will also ask you, what experience do you have? Now, if you have just exited from high school, I would ask you, at your current job, are there any things that you're doing that are already related to ISO, or the key competence which are required. And usually the key competencies are policies, the key competence are being able to do risk assessment, being able to implement controls, etc, etc. If not, is there somebody who can mentor you? So you don't have to look for you can look for a mentor, let's say within WISES, within the professional bodies here, to be able to say, I need you to mentor me on this. I need you maybe to involve me. From time to time, I can volunteer my time, I can come, because that is also building your competence. So yes, certifications are good, but the reason why they always ask for experience is you cannot be able to say, I am an expert in this if I don't have experience actually implementing. So your key question should be, how do I get that experience? And I think when we come to WISES, this is a way you can volunteer, you can be able to do a lot for chapters such as this and be able actually to get the experience.
Thank you, Stella, for that comprehensive response. We have another question from Agnes. How do you bridge the gap between compliance requirements and business enablement without compromising security?
Okay. Your question is quite about me being able to see a particular scenario, but I will just give an example of how laws are written, and then looking at then how those are then interpreted. So I've been doing a project recently just to be able to take the data protection law for Uganda, break it up, and then be able to create an audit manual, and then to be able to audit individuals. So if you read the data protection law, for example, it will tell you things like you need to have a data protection officer. It will tell you you need to have a data protection impact assessment when you are doing when you're doing certain high risk activities, and it will give a very shallow, let me say, definition of what those high risk activities are. So when it comes to, if for example I was working in a certain organization, my role is to pick that requirement and then be able to interpret it and say, okay, this law requires us to do a data protection impact assessment when we do high risk processing. What is the definition of high risk processing? So then I would write a procedure which would state, this is what we as this organization have defined as high risk processing. I would then need to sensitize that procedure in the organization and get people to actually sign off and say, yes, we agree that this is the criteria. So it will have set, maybe, for example, certain number of records are being processed, certain tools are being utilized, maybe the data is being sent overseas. That qualifies as a high risk process. And then from there, you go ahead and say, okay, we have now defined this criteria. Now we have this new product which is coming in, it has qualified against that criteria. We need to do a DPIA. So we then go ahead and we do a DPIA, and we say, because it is a high risk process, we need to make sure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is being done. Now, remember when I was speaking, I said one of the key things is that as a GRC professional, you have to really, really develop your soft skills, because you will be picking information that is, and even if you look at ISO 27, you look at the best practices, there's nothing which will tell you, for example, remove users within 2 days or 1 day, or have a password policy that is X. It will guide you, but leave a lot of room for interpretation. So as a GRC professional, what you are doing, you are interpreting for the organization. What do they need to do? Because there are different strategies of how you can secure an environment. So when you come to an environment, you have to understand what's the strategy of this environment, where are the crown jewels. When I say security, or when I say we want to implement something in a certain way, how am I going to convince this management that this is the right way? So then those soft skills of communication, convincing, being able to be analytical, being able to think deeply are some of the things that you really have to develop as a GRC professional. So those are, I guess, what I would say as a guideline when it comes to bridging the gap between compliance requirements and business enabling.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Stella. Just in summary, that also explains how a lot of these requirements that are provided by our regulators are descriptive to an extent, but the way we implement and go about them is very much subjective and prescriptive to our organization. So as GRC and as security, the onus is on us to be able to interpret these well enough for both our technical and non-technical audiences. We've got another question from Terry and Maxwell. When learning frameworks, do we need to memorize what their content is, or is general knowledge of each one sufficient?
So Tyrion has used the scary word, memorize. When we look at frameworks, so for example, I have seen like the ISO 27, the ISO 22301. A lot of the certifications will tell you this is an open book certification. So you will do an exam, but it will be an open book exam. So you can actually have a copy of the standard, a copy of the notes as you're doing the exam. The reason behind this is really because it is not about being able to cram the standard from page 1 to page 0, but it's all about being able to say this is what the standard requires and this is how I have interpreted it to my environment. So there's a lot of interpretation which you do. Just memorizing the standard will not help you, but being able to interpret it is what is actually, that's where the change happens, and being able to interpret it for your organization. Because you notice that you can have Stanbic, which is a big bank in Uganda, but there are also other smaller banks. There are also maybe a number of fintechs which might not have the same resources. So how do you interpret a certain requirement and be able to make it relevant to organization A, organization B, organization C, and be able to even give them a roadmap and say, fine, you're here, you're at a level 3. But if you do 1, 2, 3, you will be at level 4. And in the next 5 years, if you're able to invest in 4, 5, 6, you'll be at level 5. So also it's about that sort of thinking, that we are not saying that there's one size fits all. We put everybody with the same cloth, but we are saying we are understanding the organization, understanding what the best practices are telling us, and then being able to interpret it to your environment.
Thank you, Stella, for that. Essentially, it's not a one size fits all. So it's important for us to have that in mind. We've got a question from Agava Diana. Due to regulatory pressures, organizations are having compliance-driven strategies rather than a risk-based reduction approach. How can organizations find that balance?
Sometimes it's a problem of how the regulation has been written. There's a certain fintech that we have dealt with that is in operations across Africa, and how they have implemented, for example, their disaster recovery is that they have hubs. So, for example, they will have a East Africa hub, South Africa hub, North Africa hub, etc., etc. So they have like 5 hubs across the whole of Africa, and basically there is the primary and then the DR, the primary DR, etc., etc. And that, from an economic perspective, has been, it has helped them keep their cost of running that application or the service they run at a reasonable cost to users. Now, in some markets, one of the things they have faced is the regulator saying that we need data residency. So we need data. If it is, for example, Uganda data, I'm just using an example of Uganda. Uganda data, it should be within Uganda. So we don't want your data centers to be in South Africa, etc., etc. Now imagine a service like Google, a service like Facebook, a service like Instagram, if that was the requirement across all jurisdictions, that every jurisdiction is saying, if you want to interact with Uganda data, you must have a data center within Uganda. It would be expensive for institutions to scale. So what then happens is that sometimes the regulator, okay, I don't know if I say the regulator is wrong, but it would require a lot of interaction with the regulator to be able to understand the business perspective and to understand that certain exceptions really need to be implemented for us to be able to have, just sufficiency in terms of that. So from a regulator perspective, what I've seen and in my previous experience is that be part of regulations being built, if you can. And in every institution, I believe there should be we used to call it actually protocol when I was in telco. So telco managed the regulator, and they are able actually to tell the regulator that regulation you have put in place does not make sense, and does not make sense because of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So again, sometimes the regulator, in being a bit too prescriptive, can restrict business, and sometimes the regulator needs to be tethered. So what I would encourage there is, if you have the muscle, and if you have especially groups, like for example, if it's banking, you have Uganda bankers, if you have fintech associations, you can go ahead and you can petition against certain regulations that don't work for you, especially from a risk management perspective, if they are too prescriptive.
Patricia, are you still there? Well, thanks.
Thank you.
Stella. Yeah,
Thank
I see
you.
she's back.
Stella. We have overshot our apologies. We request our audience for 5 more minutes to take our last question, and we have a few announcements that will then be shared by Pauline. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
We can.
You're now muted, Patricia. Okay.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. And on behalf of the WSIS Uganda affiliate, I would like to sincerely thank you for joining today's webinar. And wow, a special thank you to our speaker, Stella Simiyu, for sharing her time, knowledge, and experience with us. Thank you, Stella, for making GRC practical and relatable, and for reminding us that cybersecurity careers do not all begin in the same place. My key takeaway from today's session is self-awareness and intentionality. Self-awareness helps us to recognize the strengths and experiences we already bring, while intentionality helps us to turn those strengths into action by seeking opportunities, building skills, and positioning ourselves for growth. So GRC is a powerful pathway because it allows for people to connect their existing experience to cybersecurity in a strategic and practical way. I would also like to highlight some current business opportunities. Applications are open for the Cyber Competency Builder with just hacking training, starting with the AI Cyber Defense Ops. Applications were open on June 8th, and they run up to June 26th. And the course runs from July 6th up until August 3rd. So members should also look out for the upcoming courses in script-based malware analysis and web application penetration testing. Then there's also another program, the Executive Leaders Network, which is open for senior level members, offering an opportunity to connect, learn, and grow in cybersecurity leadership. For those who are not yet WSIS members, we warmly invite you to reach out to us. We would be happy to support you through the membership process and guide you on how to join at a discounted rate so you can access these and many other WSIS benefits. I also want to thank everyone who has signed up for the WSIS AI Learning Series 2026. AI is already shaping cybersecurity, governance, risk, privacy, and threat detection. So we encourage you to attend actively, ask all your questions, and share what you learn with others. Finally, WSIS Uganda will be making 1 year on the 25th of June. This is a big milestone for us, 1 year of building community, creating visibility, sharing opportunities, celebrating women in cybersecurity, and welcoming our allies. As we approach the 25th of June, we invite you to celebrate with us and reflect on how far we've come. Yeah, so thank you again to Stella Simiyu, to everyone who joined us today, and to the WSIS Uganda community for continuing to show up, learn, and grow together. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stella. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening and feel free to drop off